Okay, so I had to log out of that my last video as I was watching Michael Pachter's breakdown of the youngins that are coming, down the line. And I remember I had this conversation with some folk who cover the gaming industry. They're much more PlayStation aficionados, and one thing that they still believe is this methodology that has established these platforms: make a hardware piece, but some value proposition that is actually predicated by locking games to your ecosystem. So people can come to your ecosystem and play these games that they would otherwise not be able to play elsewhere. In the past, that could work, seeing as there weren't necessarily a lot of games that were out there in the gaming industry. Today, nonetheless, the saturation is insane. Valve has 18 plus going on 19,000 games that might launch on Steam this year. That becomes a trend. That's the end. As much as people have tried to ignore these games, right, and say, oh, well, these games are shovelware or whatever it is, the reality is that these so called shovelware games do have an audience that they serve. And the audience that they serve are these youngins coming up. And many of them are starting to build gaming PCs. You have to remember when they were watching their favorite streamers were streaming on PCs. That right there, it tweaks the perception of that gamer that that particular device is one that gives them that, somewhat, attache status of the streamer. So there's already that generation that just watched Ninja and has already just gravitated towards understanding that platform agnosticism is fine. Then they're the ones that were introduced to Roblox and Minecraft and Overwatch and Rocket League. In fact, today in the schools that your children go to, if they go to elementary, middle school, high schools, they have esports programs in these schools. They compete on some of these games like Marvel Rivals, Overwatch, fighting games as well. So for them, it's never really been about the platforms like it was for, say, some other generations. It's now about the games. You understand what I mean? Another really interesting thing is the things that were interesting and exciting to us in our time are just fading. I have a story that I was telling in the previous video, and if you didn't watch it, maybe you can just find it or whatever it is. But there's a student in one of my classes. She has a really intimidating look. It's weird. Whenever she looks at her peers, they kind of back away, and it makes me laugh. As a teacher, I just and she doesn't like the shenanigans that kids sometimes would be doing in class, like when it's time for everybody to get back in order so we can get the order of the day going. And so today, this student was not in class, and I was like, oh, where's this student? They were like, well, apparently, she's not here today, blah 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 blah. I said, man, if she was here, she would probably ensure that you're not laughing inordinately because she's got that Jean Grey look. And I made a reference to Jean Grey of the X-Men. Y'all know Jean Grey. Y'all know, Phoenix. I mean, come on now. Do you know what these kids said to me? They said, who's Jean Grey? I said, do you guys not know X-Men lore? They said, oh, X-Men, that's like old people cartoon. Then there were some of them who had never heard of X-Men before. In fact, one of them, and I was like, wait, they made another X-Men cartoon for you guys just the other day. Another one was like, yeah, 97. I said, so you watched it. Why are you pretending like you're so cool? And you don't watch X Men anymore. He's like, no, I didn't watch it. I saw my dad watching it. I was like, ah, I was like, oh, ouch. And I'm a millennial, by the way. So this was even so much more revealing that the things that really did appeal to us, in a sense, to be very honest, ladies and gentlemen, that time is just fading and passing away. Looking at the way, you know, Netflix is fighting over Warner Brothers, what they're fighting over for the most part is the adaptation of a lot of these things for the younger audiences. And if you've been paying attention to DC, if you've been paying attention to Marvel, if you've been paying attention to all these, they've been making attempts to reintroduce these characters and franchises to the younger audiences via, say, their parents who say, oh, the nostalgia of X-Men. Hey, let's all watch X-Men and all that stuff. But I got to tell you, the generation of kids that are coming along, man, I mean, they've been cocomeloned and skibbidied into oblivion. Their appreciation for these things are just not going to be the same. And so is the appreciation that you think they're going to hold for this so-called old school methodology of gaming. Those things are not going to be there. It's just the way things are. And so when we bring it into the gaming front and you listen to Pactor talking about kids don't care about your fanboyism, he's right. He really is. So let's continue from this part here where he's talking a little bit about Roblox and such.
And I'm not suggesting that games are going to go up 5x, but will they triple over the next 10 years? Yeah, they will. So I'm not really worried about publishers creating new customers. I am very worried about console manufacturers. The console is just not necessary. I mean, for single player, it is not necessary at all. You can play single player in the cloud. So connected TV is going to explode the availability of content, and publishers are going to win.
They are. They're going to deliver content to you wherever it is that you are. They're winning. That's why Xbox decided that it was going to make itself a publishing powerhouse, and so has PlayStation. Some of you still don't know that PlayStation has actually positioned itself to also be a powerhouse publisher. That's why it's publishing on Steam. That's why right now, if you look at the leaks from Insomniac back then, they had a little slide that showed that they wanted to be an IP powerhouse and then scale their IP multi-platform to mobile and to PC. They know where they're supposed to be. It's the fanboys that pretend like they don't know where they're supposed to be. Y'all don't run PlayStation's business. PlayStation is very well aware of what's going to actually make the money. They're all studying and all watching the behavior of these gamers. You feel me?
Console manufacturers, not so much, because you're not going to be a console. Will you buy a console for multiplayer? 100%, you will. But do you need to? No. You could, if you could figure out a way to connect your PC to your TV, you'll play that way. So the cool thing about connected TV is they eliminate that, what is it now, $550 barrier? What's a PS5 cost now? They eliminate that $650 barrier to entry. I'm telling you, there's a guy out there who wants to play Madden football. And that's the only game he wants to play. Mm-hmm. He wants to buy Madden football every 2 years, and he doesn't want to play anything else. He's not buying a console for $650. But my God, if Madden was on connected TV, he would. He'd pay $70 for Madden. Is a publisher happy to sell that guy a copy of Madden? Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
And is the NFL happy that their licensed game got sold? Absolutely. So, are there 100 million of that guy? Probably not. Are there 5 million? Yeah. Enough to double sales of Madden. So, there's real opportunity to sell games to people who want to play them, who just don't have the wherewithal or the desire to spend $650 and figure out how to hook up a console in order to play the game.
That's not a barrier. Figure out how to hook up a console is not a barrier, but the barrier of spending the $500 is a real barrier. It's a real and present barrier. You know what I mean? Because trust me, if you had the option of a console box to play a game or a browser window to play a game, I'm telling you, many of the youngins right now will literally simply type in that URL and be good to go. They don't even need to wait for a controller. They will mouse that bad boy. They will mouse and keyboard that bad boy, or just use plain keyboard controls and have fun and enjoy and play that game without even worrying about this particular device. These devices gather dust because many of them, their regular days are in school, right? So they want to basically try to hop on their devices to play these games anyways. They're not really worried about all this stuff. I really don't know how a lot of the pundits are interpreting the industry anyways.
No. But by God, connected TV on your Netflix dashboard, play Madden. $70, click, done, playing. Wow. So remember I said that Netflix dashboard is going to be where I buy Madden on my connected TV. Write that down. Well, I can say that anybody not born yet who comes of age 10 years from now and starts playing games when the Xbox doesn't exist anymore and the PlayStation is a dying bullshit brand, they don't care. So they'll play connected TV. It's like my kids asked me when they were like 10. You know, I got them a cell phone when they were 9. They were like, "How old were you when you got your first cell phone?" And I went, 31. And they went, "Wow, your parents didn't give you one?" I go, "They didn't exist when I was 9." You know, my kids couldn't conceive of that because they grew up, my kids are 25, but they grew up with cell phones. Like, what do you mean they didn't have cell phones when you were a kid? And so I think that all these kids that aren't born yet that grow up with connected TV games, it's just like Netflix. You know, my kids grew up with Netflix. They can't conceive that.
Of a world without it. That right there, it blows my mind because I remember the world without the current cell phones. I remember the world with the. Some people said they used to carry like the landline phones around. I don't remember that world. I don't think growing up in Africa, a lot of people had stuff like that to even see. I remember the good old cellular phones that you had that antenna and Motorola used to make them. The network was spotty as heck. You'd be speaking to somebody and you could barely hear them. And then I remember, the GSM and the cell phone started coming in and we had text message and all of this. And I remember dial-up internet. Oh, man. I remember internet cafes because you couldn't even afford to get internet in your home. And so you have to go elsewhere to do that. Now, what? A world not internet? Like, the kids are like, oh, well, we want to make this recipe, Dad. We want to try this stuff out. Yeah, we'll look up on Pinterest or something. Like, it's insane, right? Oh, man, watch these kids very well. When kids are growing up, they start tampering with stuff. They want to tinker. I remember one day one of our children, still little then, he walked up to the TV. We paused the TV show, right? He walked up to the TV and he started touching the screen to hit the play button because he thought the screen was a touch screen. I just put my hand on my head and went, yo, that blew my mind because they can't conceive of a world where the technology is not even interactive in a certain way. Bro, I don't know, man. We need to be much more observant. I think a lot of times when we talk about the gaming industry, it's lacking the observation that can help us make good, deductions at the end of the day.
We actually watched linear TV when the show was on by appointment. Like, how did you do that? Why would you do something stupid like that? Why can't you watch everything on demand? So this new generation, they don't give a shit that you're a PlayStation fanboy. Sorry. They don't care about Xbox. Nintendo, they'll probably still care about because Nintendo's never going to change. But so there always will be Nintendo consoles. But and I think if Nintendo were to put everything on connected TV, they sell a lot more software too. But Nintendo, the one difference is Nintendo calls itself a hardware company, and they genuinely believe it. And even
I think Nintendo is going to eat huge fat crow. I don't know what it is, but I already smell blood in the water. This their delay of giving third-party development kits, to me, that's the bleeding right there. At first, I started to smell blood in the water when they started to do some things, but then they were like, oh, and then some developers were like, yeah, we haven't received developer kits yet. That's when I was like, it's over. That's it. That's literally what's waiting at the door for them. They'll have to gatekeep their ecosystem and pretty much depend on, the naivete or the brand loyalty of a lot of people. But once these people start to realize that they can get themselves a handheld gaming PC, have access to Valve's markets, which has a lot of games, by the way, that would play like Nintendo games. Have you typed in the word racing in here to see all the racing possibilities that you have here? Many of them of different kinds and caliber. So what's Nintendo really making, actually, that someone is not going to come out here? I mean, look at Power World, that basically, took a few pages out of their book, but made a really solid iteration. Somebody came out, let's say a big name publisher with legal teams and everybody that cleaned up any game that they wanted to make and they wanted to go to court, they'd fight it out with them. Oh yeah, they will be smoked. They'll be smoked. And once people just start to know, that's it. Once people know, it's over. But it's okay. Information sometimes will spread very slow. But once it gets around, it's now, it's a free for all.
Even Apple doesn't call itself a hardware company. Apple thinks it's a software company. Nintendo thinks they're a hardware company. So no, Nintendo will never change. But other guys, yeah, I think you don't have to convince anybody to buy more games. Just make games more widely available at a lower overall cost. And you may buy a console for $600, whatever, and you play 10 games over the course of your life, or 20, let's even say. If you buy 20 games for $70 a piece and 600 entry fee, you bought 20 games for $2,000. You paid $100 a game. Somebody can get in for 70. That's a better deal. So
It's a better deal. Works for the developer, works for the publisher, works for everybody. Guys, there really isn't anything to say. Honestly, arguing with a lot of people that still think that this old school thing is going to happen is just at this point fun. You know what I mean? Just fun at this point, because I know that they are absolutely watching the whole thing slip away right in front of them. It's just hanging on to something that, you've probably felt, maybe some layer of nostalgia towards, and, you don't want to see it go away. I saw the way a lot of people reacted to the Xbox multi-platform thing. At some point I was like, man, this is crazy that a lot of people feel this way. But honestly, they're responding to a market that's changing fast. And, you can't give them enough money not to go ahead and position themselves to wait for that money that's coming. Because like he said, if you watch the beginning of Pactor's video, the oldest gamers are aging. They're aging out. And you still have a supply of the new, like he said, 5-year-olds that are coming into the fray. And keep in mind, I don't let my children play Roblox. They play a little bit of Minecraft. Like, they literally play games like Ratchet and Clank. Like, I give them, access to those games. But sometimes they'll put those games aside and they just want to play, like, a fun game. This one, you know what I mean? Like, if they see Roblox, they probably won't play anything again. They don't know it exists. That's man, I feel bad, but I'm trying to push gaming forward. Peace out.